Share some hard news that hit us in our South Davis cities Friday afternoon. So for those of you that aren't totally familiar with, I'm enjoying this echo. Okay, we'll try that again. So for those of you that aren't from Davis County and South Davis County, you might not be aware that we are organized into a fire district, which is the 5 South Davis cities of North Salt Lake, Bountiful, Woods Cross, West Bountiful, and Centerville. And so together we are all joined in the South Davis Metro Fire District. Sadly, on Friday afternoon, we were alerted to the passing of our fire chief, Greg Stewart. And Cameron, I know you said the slides would advance, but they're not advancing. That has been a kind of a heavy thing for those of us in the 5 South Davis cities, and to deal with his sudden passing. I know that the other cities have been heartened, as have I, to see the support that has come from our fellow cities, and quite frankly, the amazing support that comes from the fire family in instances like this. To help rally around his family, his wife and 3 kids, and to make sure that our firefighters could come out of service for an amount of time to grieve and to engage in peer support. So I really want to thank those of you whose cities stepped forward to provide that coverage for us on this very difficult weekend that we experienced as we mourn our chief. Chief Stewart had been our fire chief for the past 2 years. He had served at every level of the fire service, working his way up through the ranks. Personally, he was the incident commander for a fire we had that impacted Bountiful and Centerville in 2019, and his leadership at that fire is something that has always been deeply personal and meaningful to me. And so I'd like to ask if we could just observe a moment of silence for Chief Stewart for just a few minutes. Thank you. And thank you for your continued support of our collective 5 South Davis communities as we mourn and figure out how we move forward in a way that honors him and keeps his legacy alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bradshaw. Now I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes from last week's LPC meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion here. Do I have a second? And a second there. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I'll turn the time to Cameron.
Welcome everybody to LPC. Mayor Bradshaw, thank you for that tribute to Chief Stewart, and our condolences to all of our friends and family in the South Davis Fire District, and hold your loved ones tight. Thank you, Mayor Bradshaw, for that tribute. Let's jump into the business at hand. This is the second to last Legislative Policy Committee of the 2026 session. So the good news is we have 9.5 business days to go. And a lot is going to happen. For those of you who are new, let me just walk you through procedurally what the next 9.5 business days are going to look like. This is the last week of committee hearings on every day. By the beginning of next week, a bill has to pass out of its originating body. So if you have House Bill 100, it has to pass the House by the beginning of next week. If it does not, then it is procedurally nearly dead. Yes, it's mostly dead. There was one year up here, we actually had 53 bills that impacted local government that were all in committee on the same day because of the number of committees that were happening simultaneously. Okay, that's the record in my career. Today and tomorrow, our 24-hour period isn't quite that big, but it's getting there. Because again, as we've told you many times, record number of bills this year. We're almost to 600 bills in the House for the first time ever. So there's a lot of bills that need to work their way through the process over the next week. So that's piece number one. Piece number two, every bill is supposed to have 2 committee hearings, one in the House and one in the Senate. Okay. That is what is supposed to happen. That is not what usually happens. It is rare for a bill, but not unheard of, to pass without having any committee hearings, but it sometimes does happen. Usually what will happen is bills will get at least 1 committee hearing. So the first 5 weeks of the session, we may get multiple cracks to shoot at a bill. We may be able to shoot it in the House committee and then on the House floor and then Senate committee and then on Senate floor. In the last 9.5 days of the session, that's not the case. So that's why the action alerts are going to be critical, because there will be bills that we just need to shoot at right away and we can't wait for them to keep going in the process. Okay. Conversely, you have a lot of legislators who want their bills just to keep going in the process. We'll fix it, we'll fix it, we'll fix it. So there are bills that have made it through committee to date that are bad bills, but where the committee members have told the bill sponsor, we expect you to fix this before it gets to the floor. So a lot of what we're doing over these next few days is addressing those issues of bills that the committee said yes in committee, but said we want this fixed before it comes to the floor. Okay? Any questions just about the procedure of the last 9.5 business days? Okay. All right, then let's get into it. There's been some good media coverage. If you haven't listened to this, I recommend it. This was a good conversation we had with KUER about that balance between state legislation and local control. So if you haven't listened to it, take a listen. I also want to give a shout out to the league officers. Last week, the league officers were basically full-time league staff. The league officers were testifying in committees with us. We had meetings with the Senate president and the House speaker. This is not a complete photo album of just how much time that they were spending up here. So like Mayor Palmer, your photo didn't make the cut of when you were testifying, but I just want everybody to know you did. And then, even Councilmember Hinton, even though she was testifying remotely, but she was still there front and center testifying, along with President Bradshaw and former President Walker. Oh, there you go. And then you can see we met with the speaker on Thursday and the Senate president on Thursday to just do a check-in on all of the moving pieces. It was very much a rapid fire meeting where we were saying, okay, where are you at here, 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 and here, and then left behind updates for their staff. And we've been having similar conversations with the governor's office as well. So thank you to Mayor Bradshaw, to Mayor Palmer, to City Manager Seth Perrins from Spanish Fork, to Councilmember Hinton, and to Mayor Walker for all of their time last week and in advance for their time over the next 9.5 days. Okay, we want to also do a check-in on our outreach efforts. So this is an easy Slido poll, and I'm really hoping this comes back with strong numbers on the daily side, but it's important to just check in. How often are we communicating with legislators? Mayor Bradshaw, is there anything you wanted to say on this one? Microphone, God, without an echo now.
This engagement that you do with your legislators, it's huge. We had a couple different bills in the last week where we had that full league call out for certain bills and committees. And the outreach that you do is incredibly meaningful. Multiple times on bills, we've had legislators say, give league staff, I don't know, I'm leaning one way or I'm leaning the other. But then an hour or two later, we'll check in and they'll say, I heard from every member of the city council. I represent 3 cities. I heard from all 3 mayors, and all of a sudden they are solidly with us. So if you've ever wondered if your outreach matters, it matters deeply up here. Your connection with your legislators is very impactful. So hopefully for the next 9 days, if we were to pull this again, the daily line will go like way up. Because you are really that important in terms of your ability to sway and move your legislators during the legislative session.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. That is our secret sauce up here. So thank you to those who've done it. And one other shout out I want to give is we had 3 bills, 3 problematic bills that the whole organization was opposed to, but they were in committee last week. So we didn't do a full action alert for every mayor and every council member and every city manager. They were targeted in those 3 committees, and we were able to stop all 3 bills in committee. So those of you who followed up with your legislators to stop those bills in committee, you did a solid for everybody else, because we were able to avoid those bills getting to the floor and having to do a full floor fight. So thank you for helping us kill those 3 bills in committee last week. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. And I'm going to actually turn it to Cassidy. You're still working on AV. This is a request that we actually just got from the National League of Cities, and it's time sensitive. And so we thought we'd quickly just bring it up to LPC. So Cassidy, I'll give you a moment to bring this one up.
Okay, so in 2024, I believe it was the Department of Justice ruled that all governmental entities and special districts had to meet the WCAG, add that to your acronyms, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So the due date for us meeting these deadlines, if you are a city that has a population of over 50,000 people, your deadline is in about 60 days in April. If you have less than 50,000 people, your deadline is a year from now. So you need to get together with your communications people, your IT people, and maybe you outsource that, that's fine as well, and talk with them about, are we meeting these new standards? In the email tonight for the nightly email, I'll link some resources so you can kind of determine, all right, what standards are we meeting? What standards do we need to work on? NLC wants to know about how much staff time you think this is going to take if you haven't started implementing it yet, or how much money you had to pay and outsource to meet these requirements. And I will note, this is not just a website thing. So the intent of these guidelines is to help people who are visually impaired or who have audio impairment be able to access your content. So it expands beyond your website, and it also includes PDFs that you're putting out, like your agendas and your handouts. It also includes videos that you're posting online and any photos that you're posting to your social media. So it's pretty broad. So you might have multiple departments that need to create templates and guidelines in order to meet the way a reader would meet for someone who is blind, who's trying to read your different items. So it's a big lift. So get with your people who are in charge of this and kind of talk over before you submit a survey into NLC, and I'll put some more information about that in the email tonight. Any quick questions? Yes. This is federally. We actually have a bill in the legislature this year that has, I think Jared reviewed it, the bill this year for these requirements. They're making it so you have to have a legitimate cause in order to take action against a governmental entity. So you can't just have this like broad class action sweep of litigation against cities and towns, which we're supporting because it's good policy. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thanks. I'll turn it back over to Cam.
Okay, perfect. I'll leave this open for 10 more seconds. So you can put this, you can add this in. Is there anything in the chat room that we need to hit? And how many people are online? 272, that's awesome. So thank you everybody online, and thank you to the 100+ people who are here in the room. Love, love, love having your feedback. Can we do this one at the end? The project? Okay, great. Okay. All right, we mentioned to you the number of bills, and we are shattering records. Never before in state history have we had 600 bills in the House. And have we hit 600 yet today? I know we were at 596 earlier. 596, so yay, we're almost there. Yeah, well, I mean, I can think of some other bills I know that are still to come. So all in all, we're expecting there'll be 15% more bills this year than ever before. So that's why we're keeping you for an extra 15 minutes at LPC each week, is to try to make sure we get through as much as possible. Okay, that's the staggered chart, so you can see the number of bills passed per week. I want to draw your attention though to week 6 and week 7. So last week was week 5. You can see the number of bills that moved through that process, but you can see how many bills actually get to the finish line in week 6, week 7. So we stop today and we have next Monday, but we as league staff meet with the league officers basically daily during the last couple weeks of the session. And then we have a bunch of other city folks who are up here every day that we'll check in with them. So realistically, here's what's going to happen in certain things. A substitute will drop and we'll say, okay, we were opposed to the bill. This substitute addresses most of that. We need to get some feedback. And the feedback won't be, okay, wait till next Monday. The feedback will be like, great, we'll give you 3 hours. And then we'll follow up as quickly as we can to get the feedback and then move it forward. And so a lot of what happens these last couple of weeks is you as a body delegating to the league officers who we touch base with every day to say, here are these pieces that are moving. And then we rely heavily on the Slido results that you've given us, and then all the feedback you give us via email and text and phone call to help us navigate the last couple of weeks. So thank you in advance for that. Speaking of the last couple of weeks, the other thing going on is the state budget, and they got their updated revenue projections on Friday, which were actually more positive than anticipated. So they were slightly ahead on one-time money and slightly ahead on ongoing money and slightly ahead in the transportation fund. So this is what came out on Friday. Executive Appropriations is now running the show to set the state budget. So over the first 5 weeks of the session, the different appropriations committees came up with their priority lists. They've sent all those to Executive Approps. Executive Approps is now meeting daily, calling through those lists to identify where to prioritize those state dollars. So the reason we're bringing this up right now is in regard to local administrative advisor. I'll turn it to Molly to give an update of where we're at there.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for all of your work in helping reach out to committees for local administrative advisor and the other technical assistance funding. The cut that they were contemplating for the technical assistance more broadly is no longer being considered in the budget, which is a huge win. One thing we really need to make sure we are pushing for is, as EAC is moving through their final appropriations, making sure that we get those LAA dollars restored in an ongoing basis. So if you have any legislators who are on the EAC, please, please, please be reaching out to them over this next week, as we were discussing, daily if needed, to make sure that we are getting those LAA dollars restored ongoing. Thank you so much. Here they are.
Okay, here they are. There's Republicans and Democrats on executive appropriations. There are people who represent urban areas and people who represent rural areas on here. For those of you who are in urban areas, we still urge you to drop a note to these legislators to urge them to support ongoing funding for local administrative advisor. Even though it may never directly impact your city, it helps your sister cities around the state. And the more administrative support we can get to those smaller cities, the more in the long term we can avoid issues that rise up to the level of potential legislation. So in that regard, it benefits you indirectly, and then we're all just better served by professional city administration at every level. So even if your city doesn't benefit directly from LAA, if you have somebody on the screen, please, please, please reach out to them. Ongoing $500,000 for local administrative advisor, okay? Executive Approps meets every day between now and the end of next week. So this is not one where wait to do it next week. Please bring it up every possible opportunity. There's also one of the financial requests that we're watching right now is around cybersecurity support. There'll be other things that benefit local governments that we're keeping our eyes on. Historically, we've told legislators we're supportive of appropriations in these spaces, like with cybersecurity, but we don't get involved in the exact dollar amount because it's state money and state resources. LA has been a little bit different because that's come through the League Board of Directors of this is the exact ask. So we're supportive of this in principle. The LAA is more specific, and then it dovetails into the other technical assistance programs that the governor's office runs that support our local governments. Okay. All right, let's start into housing and land use. You're going to refresh. Great. We've been telling you a substitute was coming, and so we were waiting to do a little deeper dive on these bills until the substitute was out. We have the substitute this morning. I don't believe, Jared, it's public yet, right? Everybody's still double checking it. Great. So SB 284 and House Bill 477 are both land use task force related bills. House Bill 477 and SB 284, I expect at some point over the course of the next few days, we're probably going to get merged into just one bill rather than having two land use bills trying to go through the process simultaneously. I'm expecting at some point they'll get merged into one vehicle instead of the other. Perfect. Thank you, sir. We were updating it based on what we're reading right now. So we're trying to make sure that what's on the slide is completely up to date. Jared, do you want to do 284 and then I'll do 477?
Good. Okay. So SB 284, it does a few things. One, it requires us to put our fees as well as our land use applications on our websites. If you don't have a website, or if that website is not actively maintained, I've worked out in the basin, and I know of a few cities that maybe have created a website 40 years ago, never actually used it. So we're talking about active websites that you regularly use. If the Planning Commission does not make a timely recommendation, then the legislative body must adopt or reject the land use regulation. What this is it allows, if the Planning Commission is not making a decision, then the City Council is allowed to make that decision without receiving that recommendation. It also removes the, let's see. So this one on number 3, right now, it was removes the ability of a third party to challenge a land use law. Right now, it just shifts the burden and makes it more difficult than what the land use applicant currently has. So it ups the burden of the third party neighbor and keeps the land use applicant the same. So it doesn't remove that ability, it just changes the difficulty of challenging a land use law. The fourth one removes legislative bodies as appeal authorities. And the fifth, it makes definitions for development agreements and property owners, both of which we've come to negotiation and feel comfortable with. Go ahead. Great question. Thank you. What is the definition of timely was the question. And that is a great question. The way that we have phrased it in the current, as of right now, the current legislation, it is the whatever discretion the legislative body determines is not timely. In other words, if they say, look, we're waiting on you, they can make that decision right then. So that would be timely in accordance with the discretion of the city, the legislative body, rather.
Question number 2, would checklist requirements embedded on a permit software count, or does it need to be a separate document?
Right now, it just says to post those online. It doesn't specify that all of them have to be on the same page. One thing to consider is many of you have land use laws, and I've got here on the land use regulations also posted on a municipal website. A lot of you have companies like Municode or other systems. If you just have a link on your website to that code repository, that's enough. So it's not like you have to actually PDF list on your website all the land use laws. You can connect that to your American Legal Publishing, Municode, other software.
And then one more question online. Does this take away the authority of the local board of adjustments?
Does it take away the authority of the local board of adjustment? Well, I guess it depends on if you have your legislative body as your board of adjustment. So no, this would mean that no legislative bodies are appeal authorities, period, period.
And then last question I see, is there intent to allow 6 months of deliberation for temporary ordinances?
Say that again. Right, it does not touch temporary land use regulations. Okay. Apparently, I'm having the same issues that Mayor Bradshaw had. Ah, there you go. Cam, do you want me to handle? Okay, take. Okay, this is HB 477. This is the Land Use Task Force bill. A few things that it does. It tries to remove planning commission bias. So any planning commissioner that is actively engaging in trying to either for or against a land use application being heard in front of the planning commission, I can no longer do that. Anything right now, impermissible bias is the phrase that a court case uses that we've also included in here. So basically, they can't be doing lobbying for their position because they're an administrative or in a quasi-judicial role. It also provides for training that ethics must be a part of that training. Again, the legislative body from being appeal authorities. The West Hills language, what this does is it makes sure that those that were included within a feasibility study under trying to incorporate their city and then were removed still have the same rights as those that protested initially. So if you were added on your second round to try to get to feasibility, those property owners would have the same ability as the first property owners that were included in that feasibility study to protest and say, we don't want to be a part of this. Right now, there isn't. This would allow it. And then if you remember last year, HB 368 as well as SB 179, I expect you to remember exactly what those bills were. Those were, the 368 was the Land Use Task Force bill last time. The 179 related to business use and permitting there. So, and what uses people could use conditional use. So right now, the clarification of bonding interest for cash bonds. In the past, it was unclear whether or not those bonds that had been obtained years and years and years ago before last year would still need to be figuring out the interest on those bonds and then giving that interest. This is only from May 7th, 2025 and forward. So at that point, you need to make sure in any new bonds, you'll be able to reimburse that interest. You'll need to track that interest and reimburse that as well when that cash bond is given back. Did we have? Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation.
You're good.
Can you provide some more, Richard Higginson, Bountiful City, can you provide some more clarification on what would be forbidden of planning commissioners? Is it discussion during a meeting? Is it outside of meetings only? What are the details?
The details are that planning commissioners have been out gathering folks within the city to come and protest at the planning commission meeting. And so this was an attempt to, in their appeal body role, to say, look, you are an appeal body, you should be neutral on that decision. That's kind of the background. So again, clarification on new conditional uses. There is no planning commission requirement. It can go straight to the legislative body, and they can make that determination, even though it's technically a new land use condition. The last thing there, it adds additional provisions that never made it into the county code, that did make it into the municipal code section of the land use, but did not make it into the county code. So with that I'll give it to Cam.
Perfect. Thank you, Jared. House Bill 477 also has the detached ADU language. We told you for the last couple of weeks, we've been waiting on a sub. Again, we got that bill first thing this morning, so we're reviewing it, but it does, in its form that we received this morning, have our language in around the 10,000 square foot lot size, sufficient system infrastructure, and then you see the other pieces here. So this would require cities over 5,000, so your MHP cities, to have an ordinance by October 1st to allow detached ADUs as permitted uses, subject to system infrastructure capacity on lots of 10,000 square feet or larger. So that would be the baseline, and then you build your ordinance from there of what it looks like. So again, that bill, the substitute, we're reviewing it now to make sure it's consistent with everything we've anticipated, but I expect that bill will be public in the next 12 hours or so. Any final questions on the detached ADU front? Councilmember Higginson? Nope, you're good.
More of your time.
Nope, you're good. That's why we're here.
Would this allow an internal ADU and a detached ADU on the same property?
So the question is, will it allow an internal ADU and a detached ADU on the same property? This bill is silent on that front. That is left to local ordinance to determine. Yep. Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this one? This is a pretty big deal, these two bills, and we've just been waiting for them to be ready to present. So we want to make sure we address questions we can. Councilmember Smith Evanson.
Thank you. My question is just about the Planning Commission. So the intent is to prevent planning commissioners from basically saying, hey, come protest this whatever change we're going to make. How are they anticipating that's going to be upheld? Like, how are you going to be, because when residents ask questions, even as electeds, it is our job to tell them, come speak on your behalf.
Sure.
So how are they going to determine that a person, whether it's an elected or a commissioner, has not rallied people to come speak on their behalf versus telling them it's your right to come and speak on your behalf?
No, it's a great question. We went back and forth for weeks trying to figure this piece out. So I'm going to break down my answer in a couple of ways. There's the enforcement piece, and then I'll call it the training piece. So on the enforcement piece, if Layton City had a planning commissioner that was, from the city's perspective, acting with impermissible bias, what this does is it gives you the direction to have a process to have them either vacate or recuse themselves. And so the decision still rests with Layton City. Normally I would say Cameron City, but because you asked the question, I'll say Layton City. So that decision still rests with you as the city over whether or not that planning commission needs to recuse or vacate the planning commission. This gets to the training piece. We looked at quite a few local ordinances around planning commission duties and responsibilities, and some had processes for removal and some did not. And what we found is that kind of one of the themes in the removal piece was that you could be removed for cause, and a lot of it's undefined everywhere. So as we brought this up to our internal housing group in early January, we actually had one of our city leaders who said several months ago I would have been uncomfortable with this language, but now having lived through this experience in my city where we've had a planning commissioner that I think is acting with bias, that casts a shadow over everything the city is doing administratively. And we want to make sure that when we're acting administratively, we're acting fair and that there's good due process for that applicant. So he said, I welcome having this language in statute because then my city attorney can point back to this language in the training of those planning commissioners and say, your role when you're acting administratively is to apply the law. It is not to give policy recommendations. That's when the planning commission's acting legislatively, policy recommendations to the legislative body. So that's why we spelled out here administrative or quasi-judicial, because when the planning commissioner's acting in those capacities, they should be applying the law or they should be reviewing the legality of it. They shouldn't be acting in that legislative space. So from an enforcement perspective, it resides with you. From a training perspective, we hope this will actually help improve those expectations and the roles of planning commissioners versus elected officials. Great. Any other questions on these? Anybody online, Cassidy? You answered it there? Okay. All right. SB 284 has already come through a committee hearing in the Senate. It's just waiting to be voted on the Senate side. 477 will probably get a committee hearing this week. And then, as I mentioned, I anticipate these two bills will merge together. SB 219, here's the update. We are anticipating the bill not moving forward because of discussions we've been having on trying to solve these problems. So that is a positive. House Bill 492. This is a bill that will likely be on the House floor tomorrow. It is super important that we collectively notify our legislators. Now, when we do action alerts, for better or for worse, most of our action alerts are to vote no. This is a great opportunity to contact your legislator and say, vote yes, okay? So House Bill 492 had its genesis, not just when Cal Roberts came to the annual convention in the fall, but really 3 years ago, the League Board prioritized creating an infrastructure fund where the state could partner with local governments to unlock housing units. That was 3 years ago, and now we're seeing the fruits of those labors with House Bill 492. Right now, it's contemplating to be a $100 million revolving loan fund that would be statewide, but $140 million in grant funding in Salt Lake County only. And that's due to some existing dollars in Salt Lake County that can be bonded against in order to create this grant opportunity. In both cases, the idea is bring this infrastructure money to bear to build system improvements that can then unlock housing. So one of the examples we've given, Mayor Burton, I see you in front of me, like we've given West Jordan as an example on a regular basis that if there's a way to get these water tanks built, that in turn would unlock all of these housing units that the city has planned for, but are stuck for reasons outside of your control. So if there's a partnership between state leaders and local leaders here, get that infrastructure built, that in turn unlocks these housing units. That would make West, I'll repeat it. He said that would make West Jordan very thankful. Yeah, for those online, there's awkward laughter here. The prioritization is owner-occupied housing and specifically single-family detached, but not exclusively. Okay, so the idea here is that you could use this money for condos near station areas as well as for greenfield single-family detached type units, but the system improvements to unlock these units. There's also a set aside for Point of the Mountain infrastructure and some rulemaking around state surplus land to be used for housing. So number one, homework is if you've got examples like the one I just gave to about West Jordan, if you have specific examples, we've gathered quite a few that we've shared up here, but we're starting to get media requests about this bill. Before we just hand over this data to the media, we want to know from you, do you have an example in Midvale or in Park City or in Riverton where you can say, yes, if we could get a partnership for this, it would unlock these units we planned for. Share that information with us. And then we in turn can connect you with some reporters to tell that story. And then the second thing is we just ask you to contact your House members and let them know we're supportive of this bill. And this bill really is in the spirit of partnership. Okay, House Bill 457, Jared, I'll flip it back to you. Let's just give a quick update on this one.
Those that are from Weber County, please raise your hands. Okay, this applies to you and no one else. So if you want to comment, you've got to be a Weber County. So as you can see, it says Weber, Davis, and Utah. Negotiations happen fast. And as of this morning, it is only Weber County, not Utah, not Davis. This would be an automatic annexation for any inner islands, but only if one, that's over 55 acres, two, if any of these 1, 2, and 3 apply. So either you're currently servicing with sewer and water, 2, you already have infrastructure that's up to city standards within those areas, and 3, there is no infrastructure to begin with. So you're not having to update that infrastructure. So those 3 areas, we've talked to probably 20, 25 different cities when it initially happened, of all second-class counties. Just talking to several cities this morning in Weber County. But this is currently where it stands. Any questions from those in Weber County? Say that again. 55 acres. North Ogden is the winner in Weber County of number of islands within the city. Everyone else usually just has 1 or 2. So, okay. This is for everyone. That is within a local government, so county or city, located in a 3rd and 4th class county, but that touches a 1st or 2nd class county. It's amazing how creative they get. We've got a list of about 8 or 9 different counties, and Alexa, I'm looking for Alexa. We've got that list that we can share with you, but the applicable counties will have to create a corridor preservation and urban reserve areas. That's areas where they think that infrastructure and housing and development will go. Each of them have to create that. We have really negotiated down what it started as, and all that we have to do as cities is to review the county's corridor preservation and urban reserve areas in our general plan process. So, when?
Perfect. Thank you, Jared. On the agenda, we initially had SB 309, but that bill got held in committee, is likely not moving forward this session. The purpose of that bill was to create a new excise tax on rental housing, but the committee unanimously voted to hold it. So I anticipate that bill is not moving forward this session. Instead, we had somebody ask as we were walking in about House Bill 436 and a quick update. And this is one where we've been working on some amendments that just haven't gone public yet. This is Representative Grecius's moderate income housing bill. And one of the amendments that we've been working on with her is to actually have a 1-year pause on new MIHP reporting. And so recognizing that as the state is shifting in House Bill 68 from all the different agencies doing lots of different things in housing down to under the umbrella of GOEO, it made sense to say, well, let's press a pause on MIHP reporting for the year. And then as we rebuild MIHP in whatever things look like going forward, then we can start from there. So stay tuned. That's one of the things we've been discussing there. Also working on just some technical clarifications around using the right data set around certificates of occupancy. So stay tuned there. The bill passed the House, but she pinky promised that we would be able to finish those amendments on the Senate side. Speaking of the Senate, let's quickly pivot to Rev and Tax. I'm going to talk quickly because we spent a lot of time on these. I just have a few minor updates. Well, I shouldn't say minor. I have a few updates. They're not minor. So number one, Senator McKay is working on a new sub. I literally got it 3 minutes ago, and that's what I just texted to Roger, so he's reading it now. But we're anticipating the new sub is going to have language in there related to fund balance and new growth. We asked you some really detailed Slido questions last week that were super helpful. And we shared those with the league officers, and we actually talked through them some with the city managers on Friday as we're trying to figure out where does this land on SB 97. So thank you for all of that feedback. That's what we're using as we're engaging here. House Bill 236. This was the slide. This was the slide that we've had for the last few weeks. Last week, Bountiful City Manager Gary Hill presented a concept that he and Carrie Nakamura from the league and others in our work group had been working on. This is the summary of that feedback to date. And here is what our new proposal will look like that Representative Peterson is considering. We got the substitute of this over the weekend as well. We're just waiting for it to go public. Once it goes public, we'll ask for kind of quick feedback, and then that bill is moving. It's already passed the House. So here's what it would look like instead. So actually, let me take a second and go back here. So this is what the version that's public right now looks like. Requires that if Cameron City is going through truth and taxation, you have to hold the preliminary property tax increase meeting, and we'd agree to that. But where things got sticky was around this requirement to have a tentative operating budget that did not include the property tax increase. That's where it got really tricky of how to make this process work. So instead of that, here's what the new substitute of House Bill 236 is going to look like. First, you still hold that public meeting that we were describing. Second, if you're proposing the tax increase, you would do an interim budget, okay? That interim budget would include approving the tax rate. But here's where it would be different than the status quo today. That interim budget would include a restricted account with the equivalent of the tax increase. So if Cameron City was contemplating a tax increase of, say, $500,000, well, Cameron City would pass that interim budget with that $500,000 tax increase as part of it, just like you would today. But where it's different from today is that $500,000 basically the equivalent amount would be in a holding account until your August truth and taxation hearing. And then once you approve it in August, then that money becomes available to use. But that way it's addressing the concern that the public has raised and many legislators share, which is by the time you get to August, minds are made up because you've already started the new budget year. So here you'd have a restricted account, and then you would have what we've referred to as an impact statement. So as part of the transparency to the public, you'd be required to have an impact statement where Cameron City would say, these $500,000 are going to be spent for these 2 new police officers and to redo this park or whatever the case may be. So it's the impact statement plus that holding account concept. Item number 6 is a big one. In our conversations with her, we had a lot of cities who got tripped up on truth and taxation last year. And so she's agreed to have a grace period for this new process so that if Cameron City in good faith follows this process and doesn't get it exactly right in this first year, the tax commission does not certify the tax rate if Cameron City missed one of these new provisions, if the miss was in good faith. Now, if Cameron City screws something else up, that's different. But for these new provisions, having that 1-year grace period. So the key pieces here, interim budget, the impact statement, and the restricted account. Any questions about this? We surveyed this with you last week after Gary presented it, and the numbers came back quite favorable, which is why we proceeded into the drafting. But this is the last chance here because the substitute's coming. Question of when is the substitute coming? All substitutes come when substitutes come. So I have a version that we went through with her Friday afternoon and made some edits on it. So I'm just waiting for the newest substitute to go public. Okay. I'm going to keep going then. Speaking of those who got tripped up last year, SB 238 is the attempt to clean up some of those things. It's a technical bill only. We've sent amendments to Senator Wilson we hope he'll accept to clarify these points. So stay tuned on this. Those of you in Cache Valley, welcome your help. I know Mayor Peterson of North Logan's been in touch with him to ask him to accept these amendments as well. Okay. All right, House Bill 365, different property tax bill, different Representative Peterson. Okay, everybody tracking so far? This is fun. Anybody know how many Representative Petersons there are? 4, yes, 4 Representative Petersons out of 75. Okay, so this is Representative Tom Peterson, former Brigham City Council member. This bill was going to be heard on the floor this afternoon. So we were getting ready to do a big action alert to have everybody contact legislators to push back on this bill on the House floor. To the credit of Representative Tom Peterson, we met with him this morning. He agreed to circle the bill. For those of you who are new, circle just means kind of sets it aside and they keep going. He agreed to circle it for a couple of days to see if we can merge his concepts with Representative Karen Peterson's bill. Okay, everybody with me so far? What Tom Peterson's bill would do as currently drafted is it would require the city to notify the public before April 1st if you're doing a property tax increase. 2 problems there. Problem number 1, cities often still don't have enough information come April 1st. And problem number 2, and this is the argument that Councilmember Hinton and I leaned into him when we were meeting with him this morning, was that Councilmember Hinton, as well as the rest of the city council members out there, you don't even have a budget in front of you yet to deliberate on. And yet you're asking the budget officer to notify the general public, we're considering a tax increase. And that interferes with the authority of Councilmember Hinton and the rest of the city councils. Also, the bill currently locks in whatever that rate is. So the budget officer in Cameron City says, we think we need a 7% increase. And the council hasn't even had a chance to look at that budget yet. The finance director or the budget officer has now put that cap out there. So he acknowledged our concerns on it and said his objective as a former council member is he wants more information to the public sooner that the city is contemplating a tax increase. And that is a noble effort. And we said, give us some time to see if we can merge it with Karen Peterson's bill. If we can't, we might still have to oppose it. I'm hopeful that we can. Any questions on this one? Be prepared. This is one where if we can't get to yes, we may have to do an all-out effort to try to stop the bill. So watch for action alerts. But again, I'm hopeful, and he was very responsive this morning, that we can figure out a way to address what he wants to address and do it in a way that's consistent with Representative Karen Peterson's bill. House Bill 449 and HJR 20, these bills are still in rules, but could emerge. These would have voter approval for any tax increases. So very concerning based on the feedback you've given us. We're trying to keep them in rules. So stay tuned. And then this bill will be in committee tomorrow. It only affects Salt Lake City and Murray, but it's just a technical cleanup to addressing a tax issue in Salt Lake County, but with all the sensitivity around property tax, we just wanted to make sure you were aware of it. Okay. Last but not least, in the tax space, out HB 575, we presented this last week and it came out last Tuesday morning. And we told you that it was contemplating a decrease in the BNC fund, but that we were anticipating that we'd be held harmless because that's what leadership had been telling us for months. That just wasn't in the original bill. So our recommendation last week was position pending until we got that confirmation. The bill went to committee, new substitute came out. In that substitute, the state actually transfers almost $12 million of state dollars into the BNC fund to hold cities, towns, and counties harmless. So the state will reduce the gas tax temporarily, but only the state will see a reduced amount of revenue. So we wanted to report back that our recommendation is to be neutral on the bill because it's ultimately neutral to us, but appreciative of the legislative leadership for cutting a tax over here that does not impact us because they didn't have to do that, right? Like we've been raising the issue on the ripple effects on cities and towns, but they've followed through on their commitment that whatever they did on the state side would not directly impact us on the local side. Mayor Ramsey?
Thank you. Well, I appreciate looking at $12 million from the general fund being placed. It also takes $28 million over those 3 months from UDOT.
Sure.
So I push back a little bit on the fact that we'll be held harmless because that's our projects, our roads, whatever projects we have. $28 million out of UDOT's fund is a delay or a lack of project in our communities. And so I still don't love that. Just putting that out there.
No, thank you, Mayor Ramsey. This flow chart shows how the dollars all fit together in the gas tax and where the money goes. And then this is basically what the bill does, that the bill will drop gas tax by the equivalent of 6 cents in the short term for 6 months. And then it'll jump back up to the 33.9 cents, which is that chart on the left. So yes, the intent is to cut taxes, right? And by cutting taxes, that means a decrease in revenue. And this is state revenue that they are decreasing. Part of the reason for our recommendation is neutral is it's neutral on our budgets. And so they're cutting their taxes and therefore their revenues, but doing it in a way that doesn't directly impact us. Any other thoughts on gas tax or the recommendation? Okay. Molly, take it away.
Amazing. Well, Carson's getting us up to speed. Big thank you, Carson. As Cam mentioned last week, we had meetings with both the speaker as well as the Senate president. We were able to chat with them a little bit about homelessness policy. And specifically, we were able to ask them about the campus. And the answer is that we still do not know. There is no kind of legislative coalescence around whether or not the campus is going to happen. It's not going to happen this year. But we don't know if that is we're definitely pursuing it in the future or we're definitely moving away from it. So we still have a system that is in flux. With that said, we do finally have a homelessness bill this year. HB 596, Homelessness Amendments by Steve Elison. This bill does quite a few things as it attempts to kind of create a system pivot that I want to run through with you all. I have the key provisions that impact municipalities on the first slide, and then some other some other provisions on the second slide. First and foremost, this bill would override every conditional use permit in every city that has a shelter, and instead say that the Utah Homeless Services Board, based on rules created by the Office of Homeless Services, gets to determine your shelter capacity. They have to consider feedback from the state fire marshal. They need to consider feedback from the service provider, but they do not need to consider feedback in its current form from the city or the local fire chief. So that is a big, big preemption that we're looking at for all of the existing shelter cities. Additionally, there's another preemption which is focused at West Valley City. West Valley has been operating what is effectively a full-time year-round shelter for about 3 years. However, they've only been recognized as a winter shelter by OHS. And so because of that, West Valley has both been paying into the mitigation fund as well as receiving fewer dollars than they are paying into the mitigation fund despite hosting a 200-bed shelter. So this bill would attempt to make that shelter a permanent shelter. Additionally, it has changes to mitigation contributions for the remaining cities. In 2026, we would see about a 15% increase in contributions, including both the rate as well as the cap. And then in 2027, we would see a really significant increase in mitigation contributions. It's my understanding that that is really intended to force a conversation about creating a better system in mitigation funding. So giving us essentially a year to come up with what that mitigation system would be. But in absence of that, that is a really big system change for the mitigation contributing cities. Any questions on this slide before I jump to the next one? The bill was just numbered like 40 minutes ago, so it's in rules. But to Cam's point, this bill is going to move and this bill is going to move fast. Okay. Next question, or pardon me, next slide, some additional provisions. So it moves more of Code Blue into administrative rule and increases the temperature threshold for Code Blue from 18 degrees to 25 degrees. It also introduces Code Red, which can be called when it is 110 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter. Additionally, it creates a counties fund. Representative Clancy is running a bill to increase the tobacco tax. The intent is that those tobacco tax dollars would be put in this fund for counties, and through matching dollars, counties could begin to invest more heavily in winter response, permanent supportive housing, behavioral health, street medicine, kind of those areas in the system that counties are responsible for. So trying to better incentivize that happening. And then it also allows for forward payments for service providers rather than simply reimbursement payments. Any questions so far? Okay. We're going to jump to the Slido. Pardon me? And basically what we want to know is your comfort level with this bill as it is currently drafted. So with the capacity limits being determined by the board, with West Valley coming online as a permanent shelter, with increases to the mitigation fund, increases in Code Blue, introduction in Code Red. All right, I'm going to jump to the next slide. So to Corey's question and what I was mentioning, this bill is likely going to move. It's likely going to move quickly. And as you will see on the last slide, as well as this upcoming slide, the staff recommendation is actually to be position pending on this bill with officer action as needed. Given that we are so late in the session and that this bill, substantive things may happen to this bill before we have the opportunity to convene as a body again, this is usually a time when we would lean very heavily on our officers to make a call when necessary about what we're going to do on a bill. Recognizing that we don't have a state plan or a state system yet, and that until one comes online, the burden of the lack of plan is likely going to fall on a few key cities. The league is interested in the membership's comfort with a proposed bridge plan that you see up here right now. So while the bill says that it's going to preempt all of the conditional use permits for every shelter in the state, in conversations with the bill sponsor, he's really only interested in increasing shelter capacity at 3 specific shelters: the HRCs in Salt Lake City, of which there are 2, and the HRC in South Salt Lake. Additionally, he wants West Valley to stay online. As there is no campus or imminent plan for a campus, those beds are needed somewhere in the system. And so his thinking is to increase capacity in those cities. So one potential concept is recognizing that rather than overhauling all conditional use and all land use, recognizing that there might be a path forward if we were to strategically recognize that those shelters that he's interested in could increase their capacity. We'd want to identify a limit in code rather than just leaving it open. And pair that increase, recognizing that those cities, those 3 cities in particular, are going to carry essentially the burden of the state not having a plan. Recognize that there would be a one-time municipal assessment into mitigation to help cover that burden that they carry, while we also pursue some state funds to match that. And then moving forward, we recognize that we need to have kind of a league-wide conversation and create a task force looking at making the mitigation fund a system and a structure that can ebb and flow with a changing homelessness system rather than having to crack open the code every couple years when a new shelter comes online. Are there any questions about what that bridge proposal could mean? Oh, I'm going to go to Mayor Wood and then I'll hop over to Mayor Tran.
Just for clarification, Sheree Wood, Mayor of South Salt Lake City. Does the conditional use permit, does that process ever go away where they take our land use authority away?
I don't know. So the way the bill is drafted now, it only speaks to the capacity piece of your conditional use permit. So you can have other provisions within your CUP, but it's that capacity that
That's
is
still dependent on the state fire marshal?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
My concern is that these funds keep dwindling and we keep, as a very small city of 27,000 residents, continue to be asked to punch above our weight. We can't maintain that. We have more HUD-defined shelter beds per capita than any other city in the state. We have the family non-congregate facility, which is just under 500 beds. And then we have this men's resource center that we're being forced to flex year-round. Some kind of relief that we thought we were going to see in this bill is not necessarily here. But
Thank you. Mayor Tran?
You asked what?
Okay, Molly, you asked what we thought it could mean, which makes me wonder what you think it could mean.
Oh, pardon me.
You just
which
asked
provision?
for just this, for this bill.
Mhm.
You just asked for the bridge.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, in conversations that you're having, do you know what it could mean or where it could go?
In terms of mitigation,
In terms of all of it?
that is a great question. The fact that we met with both the Senate president and the speaker, and we said, is the campus going to happen? And they said, we don't know. I think that the powers that be are embracing the uncertainty of it, especially as Representative Clancy transitions from Representative Clancy to Homeless Coordinator Clancy. I think the expectation is that he will lead out on a plan and the state will implement whatever that plan is.
Okay.
But given that he is in his current role, we just don't know. And that is why I think we're trying to find a very intermediate solution rather than a very long-term solution. We recognize that there is a need for beds in the system. We recognize that there's a need for any municipalities that host those beds to be supported. But we don't know if it's going to be a campus. We don't know if it's going to be the investments they're making in high utilizers this year is actually going to be the thing that turns the tide and we can have fewer shelter beds and more mental health and behavioral health beds. We just don't know.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, I'm gonna move it to the Slido question. If you have any other questions about it, please feel free to ask them. I'm not sure who's next, but I will let them come up as people finish up their Slido.
All right, we are going to jump ahead because we have some guests here. We're going to jump way ahead. As always, please feel free to keep following up with any of these. Oh my gosh, so much further down. Water, there we go. All right, HB 501. we've talked about this one several times over the course of this legislative session. Just as a reminder, this is the bill that says this. And Candace or Nathan, if you want to come up now, I'll just have you guys come up. But there's going to be a substitute coming out on this bill. There's some language that's being worked on right now, and there's some changes. We've got a couple of experts here that they're going to help answer some of the questions. So this is Candace Hassan-Yeager from Water Quality and Nathan Lundstad from Drinking Water, right? I got your departments right.
Yes.
You guys moved over. I almost said Water Resources, but that's like a month old now.
Yeah.
That's been a long time. But to answer some of the questions, so one of the questions that has come up a lot on this bill is whether or not you have to raise your rates an extra 1.5% or 3%, or whether you just have to get your rates to that level in order to qualify for state funds. And then Candace and Nathan, I don't know who wants to answer that one, but I know there's some language being worked on to clarify that. So.
So yes, there is some language being worked on that it is not above and beyond your current rates. It's all inclusive. So it's a total number.
So if your rate is at 1.5% of Magi right now, you wouldn't have to do anything, is what that's saying. So I know some of the math that's being done, we're looking at this and someone's saying, oh, our rate is whatever it is right now. And you've been doing some addition and maybe saying we're doing an additional 1.5 or 3%. And that's not what the bill's intending. So the substitute is going to make it really clear that if you're, for easy math, if you're at 1.4% right now, you do 0.1% to get up to 1.5, not 1.5 in addition. I know several of you have asked me that question. There's some clarification on that. We haven't seen the substitute language on that yet, so we're not going to take a new position on that today, but just want to clarify. Are there any other questions you have on the logistics of how HB 501 is intending to work? We've got a couple of experts here that can help us answer some of those questions. So one, the mandate is gone. This is not going to apply in 2031 in the current bill, and it just applies to those who are looking to get that state funding, who would have to look at this formula. But yeah, Adam Gardner's got a question here. Wait for the mic.
So if a city were to go out and get a federal earmark for a water project, whether it's a water tank or a pump system or whatever, and they were to receive those funds but are at 2.8%, the state would not allow those monies to pass through to that city. Is that correct?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you probably know better than I do. Do the earmarks go through our divisions? I'm a little.
Yeah, so I know earmarks, congressionally directed spending does not go through our division, our board, our drinking water board or the water quality board. So I guess that's kind of probably a gray area, and I would say no.
So any federal money, so if we got a grant that went through your department and we're not at that threshold, even though we'd not be eligible to receive that. Is that correct?
It goes through your department.
If it goes through our divisions, you would need to be at that threshold to receive that
Thank you.
funding.
Yeah, and just to add a bit of clarification, and really that comes from the definition of state funds, that it includes federal funds. So if you've ever come to either of our divisions and received state revolving construction or state revolving funds, then that would impact that ability to get those federal dollars.
All right, any other questions? Oh, yeah, right here.
So glad that the mandate has been removed from that. I'm in a city where if we raise our rates to this one or also the other EQ changes that you guys made before the end of the year, we'd be able to fund our own projects. And so the question that we have is where, now that there's no mandate and the fees that are being paid stay with the city, where is this additional state money coming from if you are not any longer keeping the fees and they're going back to the city?
So basically, yeah, if I can restate it, if I understand correctly, Councilmember, under the study, like the Zion study, the idea was this fund would come from everyone paying into the fund. And so the question is, without paying into the fund now, where are these state funds coming from that they could then apply for? Is that correct?
Yep. Thank you.
So I'll just add, so this has been a really long process, right? Since 2024, the legislature directed the development of what we're calling the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan. And with that, they also created a new fund called the Water Infrastructure Fund. Only $2.5 million of kind of seed money was put into that account. So where's the rest of the money going to come from? One, there is already 1/16 sales tax that is broken up among our various agencies. So there's existing funds that are available for application for cities and agriculture. And then there is the opportunity for the legislature to directly appropriate funds. For example, this year, I think maybe like 10 RFAs have went before the Natural Resource, Ag, and Environment Appropriations Committee for water projects. And so the legislature, one, could fund those individually, or two, they could say, well, we want to put 20 million toward water infrastructure, and they could direct that all to the WIF, and then it would go through this ranked and prioritized process. Just from a timing standpoint, we're expecting the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan to be out on March 1st with a ranked and prioritized list for all of those that submitted projects.
Any other questions? Verify this. Yep, in the back here.
Is the secondary water still exempt from the 1.5%? That was a change in the bill.
Right. Yes, right now it is.
Can you maybe address that, why that's been removed? No.
The consensus, we're not exactly sure why. Really good lobbying from someone would be the answer I'd give there. But I'm not sure. I haven't.
So be able to guess why.
Do you want to guess publicly?
Well, no, I'm just saying right now, there isn't a requirement to charge by user fees until 2030. So that could also be another reason.
So that there's not that mechanism there yet.
There's
That
not a
could be.
mechanism to do that. Right now, it's all through property.
And we have, yeah, Mayor Burton. And then who am I missing? And then we have some online. Okay, perfect. Oh, and the timing, yeah. So because the secondary water fees are not per, I guess, connection until 2030. By usage until 2030, there may just not be technically the same way to charge that just yet. That's probably a better answer than what I was thinking. I'm pessimistic at this time, though. Norm.
So not a question, just a statement, but using some quick back of the napkin math, this could increase rates in our city 3 to 5, maybe even 7 times what they are right now today, which is really interesting in a potential change in requirements from the state to get a current revolving fund. So that I think that needs to be taken into account, is it is a significant amount from where we are currently at today. And we recognize that. So maybe if this is going to continue to move forward, maybe there ought to be a stepwise function. There ought to be something we can grow into it, because right now that is going to be huge to all of our residents.
And if I might, I think that has been heard, and I believe in the new substitute, there will be a little bit more timeline brought into it. So you wouldn't have to have those rates today, or the moment you went for state funding, you can kind of grow into it.
All right, we had Mayor Burton, and then I know some online.
So my question is, I'm a little slow, but help me here. West Jordan has been doing all this for all these years and building tanks and finding resources for money, like, wherever. What are we going to accomplish with this? What's our goal here?
I can maybe answer part of that. I could tell you at least what the sponsors have indicated to me. For the sponsors, the real goal is that if you're a city who's been planning and you've been raising your rates maybe incrementally to pay for some things, basically the phrase they keep using, you're getting your own house in order. What they're frustrated with are some cities that perhaps, and not even just cities, some entities, I should say, because it's not just cities, but entities that haven't really done anything to deal with that demand or that growth. And then their solution is to run to the state and get some funding for that when they haven't really done anything on their own budget to maybe raise those rates and save those funds. So from their perspective, that's what they're trying to accomplish. Basically, if you haven't gotten your own house in order, why are you coming to the state and asking for money? That's what I've been told repeatedly from the sponsors. Is there anything different there, Nathan?
Yeah, I can add to that too. I know with our drinking water board, we often have, many recipients that come looking for loans or grants. And, I've heard this statement often that, like we've been charging $20 a month for 30 years and we're really proud of that. So, that just shows that they have not, what Justin has mentioned, they have not been planning and preparing for their needs into the future. And so I think this is just a step to move in that direction.
And I know we said we have some online, at least one online. Oh, we got Mike, yep, here.
So Jonathan from Copperton, you mentioned that this is more for like cities and towns, to help manage the potential growth. With Copperton, there's not really any way for us to grow. So is there a way that we can be exempted from this?
I don't know. Right. Honestly, it's not, no, we haven't had any discussions, at least I haven't had any discussions. I don't know if you have had any discussions with the sponsor about specific exemptions. I can tell well, no, I shouldn't say that. They haven't been particularly amenable to the idea of exempting anyone out for that kind of thing. Is the answer I'll give on that one. But they, again, took out the mandate. It's only for those seeking those funds. I know that still encapsulates quite a few entities. But I'm just going to say that sponsors were not real interested in that. That being said, we'll see where the bill goes. They may get more interested if depending what the pushback looks like. And then Cassie, let's go online here, or Carson online.
Yeah, can you just clarify, so the revenue being raised, is that staying with the city?
Yes.
Or is that, okay.
Yep, so yeah, quick one just to reiterate, any revenues raised from the increased rate stays with the local entity.
And then does the eligibility for the state dollars include CIB or is that separate?
Yeah. Go.
That would include CIB.
And then are the standards used for the ranking process available anywhere or is that somewhere in a rule?
Yes, there are rules that are, I think they're either traveling through the rulemaking process, they've been presented to the natural resource interim committees, and I can send out the link to this group, or I'll send it to Justin and then you can share it out.
That'd be awesome.
And then last question, if a local government's already considering water rates, would that go towards this formula or is this formula starting from a baseline? Because it's a total amount that they have to raise, correct?
So I think, yeah, just to restate this one, you have to get to this total of 1.5 and just to do the easy math, I'll do different easy math. If you're at 1.25 right now, you don't have to raise an additional 1.5. You just have to raise an additional 0.25. And as Candace reiterated or said earlier, I'll reiterate, is in a substitute, we're expecting to see that won't be all at one time. There will be some time to grow into that. But waiting to see what the substitute says on that.
And then I guess one last question. If the city contracts for sewer services from a special district, which rate would they fall under? Would that be the 1.5% or the 3%? Just if they like indirectly provide the service or contract for the service?
Does the city bill provide the bill in their utility bill?
That's a good question, but yeah,
so
that might be
if the city
delineator.
provides the utility bill, like in the utility bill, my understanding is it would be the 3% if they include both the drinking water and the sewer fees. If they were separated, then they would only have to cover up to what they bill for.
Awesome, thank you.
Mayor Cox raised his hand up here. And wait for the mic real quick.
They have a set fee. Logan City has a set fee and municipalities have a fee. So if Logan City does it and a municipality does not, I would think that would negate, that would make it so that single municipality could not
also do it.
Participate, but Logan City could.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that one. That's a good question. Because we don't want double billing or double qualifications either.
They're separate, although a municipality may collect it for Logan City, they get their portion, and they could increase
Right.
their portion, and the municipality may not. So,
So
but
just,
if Logan City increases it to the 1.5 and this municipality increases 1.5, then we do it 3% on sewer? It has to be split differently.
yeah, I think we could talk through that specific example. I will say to the Water Quality Board, we have had situations where there is more of a regional sewer provider, I'll say, if that's the right word. And we were able to do a hardship grant because they met some of the threshold as part of the Water Quality Board to one particular city, but not to the rest because they weren't eligible. They weren't meeting that threshold. So that's just kind of one example of how it may work, but it's a good question of the devil's in the details probably on that one.
So is the bill. All right. Well, thanks, Nathan and Candace, for answering questions. When we see a new substitute, obviously we will share that out. Watch for the nightly email. Once that new substitute comes out, if you have questions, please shoot them my way and we'll make sure we get the right answers. We don't have a new bill this week, so we don't need to take a different position, but watch for this one. Obviously, last few days of the session here, things will move quickly, but we'll keep you up to date on this.
Perfect. And last year, some of you may recall, we had kind of an in-between LPC. We did a special call on a couple of different bills. I'm just saying that could always happen too, depending on what happens over the next few days. Couple quick updates. Molly's actually going to come back on homelessness. We were just looking at the Slido results that you gave us, and we need to get some clarifications from you. So she's going to come back in a moment on that. We also are reviewing SB 97 substitute. That's the property tax bill from Senator McKay. And there's still language in that substitute that would not allow a city to basically count interest that you collect. They would actually take that interest you collect and decrease it from your certified tax rate. So that language is still being contemplated, as well as requiring new growth to be counted at the end of a project, which those are two things that you guys have told us that you have concerns about. So as soon as this meeting's over, we're going to go find him to talk through those things again and hopefully get to a good place. And if we don't, then be prepared for potential action alert on several bills. Molly, I'll bring it back to you. And is Mayor Bradshaw going to join you or just you?
I don't know. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your feedback. Your feedback was interesting. Gave us a bit of a curveball that we were not prepared for twice. One, the first question, you were pretty equally split between somewhat uncomfortable and somewhat comfortable in a way that didn't really give a sense of what the staff direction could be. And then when we presented the bridge concept, it was a perfect bell curve, which again did not necessarily give us super strong direction. So if you have any color commentary you want to add, please feel free to do so. But just to be clear, the bill as it is currently drafted requires the existing shelters, all of them lose all of their conditional use permits regarding capacity. West Valley is preempted into forcing their winter shelter to become a permanent operating shelter. Your contributions go up 15% this year and then nearly 100% in 2027 and beyond, with a 5% or $500,000 contribution rate compared to the 2.55 or $275,000 contribution rate you do now. That is the kind of status quo in HB 596 as it is drafted. The bridge concept is recognizing that we need to figure something out over the next 2 years, targeting that shelter expansion at the shelters that likely need to, kind of in quotes, expand, or that the bill sponsor wants to expand, recognizing that they need increased short-term supports to do that, which may include an increase of local dollars in order to support them, while we also pursue state dollars, and the recognition that as the state figures out its long-term plan, we as cities need to figure out a long-term plan with mitigation as well. So, are there any questions, comments, concerns about either of those choices?
So Molly, there's a button missing on here. It's the neither button that we like to see.
I know you'd really like to see it. I'd love to see it too, but I gotta tell you, Norm, not an option.
I know. Thank you, though.
So,
Hi, Seth.
hello, Molly. I would really like to ask you to give us your opinion, but I'm not going to make you do that right now. But I would
Okay.
like you to give us your opinion. So, if I choose door number 2, the
Mhm.
bridge, we have a little bit more time to work
Mhm.
on some things because door number 1 seems pretty intense today.
I'm okay. Sorry,
Is
can
that
you repeat
right?
that? Our president distracted me a little bit, which I think is her
That's never
presidential
happened.
prerogative.
I never distract anybody. I can't believe that. Door number 1 seems pretty intense.
Mhm.
So door number 2 gives us time to work on some things. Door number 1 may still come back,
Mhm.
but we have a little bit more time to work on it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think there are different levels of uncertainty. And it's recognizing that, again, like within the whole campus landscape, we are navigating these seas of uncertainty.
Yeah.
But I think it's a question of what kind of pools and eddies of uncertainty within that sea we want to be navigating.
Okay.
There could be certainty in HB 596 as drafted that says no city can ever determine the capacity of their shelters ever again. That's certainty. It's also a massive land use preemption.
Yeah.
And if I may editorialize, I suspect, over the last 3 years, we've had 4 cities come online with shelters, and they've done so through their own legislative process as an affirmative decision. I think that if the state says that no city can ever determine the capacity of a shelter ever again, I don't think you're going to see a city do that in the future.
Yeah.
There's certainty with the mitigation fund and the fact that it would go up 15% this year and 100% about next year. So there's certainty there. It's a pretty unpleasant certainty.
Yeah.
Whereas I think door 2 also presents some unpleasantness. And there's uncertainty there. And it could be uncertainty that you can optimize and make better, and uncertainty that you can, it might be worse for certain cities, right? As shelter cities do better and have more resources and support, those are the other cities paying in more. As the other cities pay in less, those cities continue to carry a disproportionate share of the work in addressing this issue without the resources to balance that.
Thank you.
Seth, I'm going to supplement Molly's comments. When we met with the speaker and the president on Thursday afternoon as the league officers, both gentlemen were equally straightforward with us that they are somewhat in a wait and see approach on homelessness until Tyler Clancy finishes this legislative session and takes over as the new state homelessness coordinator. And they were both hesitant to commit significant new dollars and make significant changes because Tyler's their new guy, and they want to give Tyler the opportunity to get into his position and map them a new plan. And so for me, that means that door number 2 on the bridge approach that gets us through this session, leaves us in one of Cameron's phrases, comfortably uncomfortable, is probably the better spot than a bill that does give us certainty, but leaves us really, really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it seems like bridge is where we all need to be, not just cities, but that's where they are. So pushing with them is probably a great place. Thank you.
Just happy to contribute to the league's push-pull system that we engage in.
So with that direction or maybe lack of direction, how's the staff going to go? Or do we want to do something else like raise hands right now to give a better
So we're
direction?
gonna take the results from your Slido poll.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess it's LPC. The staff recommendation on this bill is position pending. With position pending, we would like to take the results from this Slido poll and any other feedback you have. You want to share with us after. I think we're also going to really lean heavily into the feedback of the shelter cities, specifically the 3 cities we're talking about. So I think this is also going to be really heavily driven by Salt Lake City, West Valley City, and South Salt Lake.
Thank you.
You're also going to, for the last 9 days of the session, be leaving a lot of it, not just in the staff's hands, but in the league officers' hands, as we're up here in those direct negotiations too. So I think continuous feedback from cities, both the shelter and the non-shelter cities, is going to be really key if we're moving forward in the bridge concept.
Yeah, let me just say what the survey results have been here. So normally we share these with the officers after the meeting, but just make sure we're all aligned here as we're going forward. When the reason we asked the third question is when we first asked the question, how do you feel about House Bill 596? It was basically evenly divided across the board, with uncertain being 20%, 50% in the concern space, 30%, interestingly enough, in the comfortable space. Okay. Then when we asked the question around the bridge concept, uncertain almost doubled. And so that's why we wanted to come back to make sure we were clear on like what the concept is on uncertain, because uncertain went up to 36% and was by far the highest. So now that we've asked the question, just comparing the two, we have 119 votes comparing the two, and we have one person who said HB 596. Everybody else has said the bridge approach. And so what that tells us is like nobody likes any of this, Norm, getting to your point. And I think what we're trying to figure out is we're navigating the uncertainty upstairs, but also trying to control our destiny as best we can here. And so this helps us say, okay, let's keep exploring in the next day or two what this bridge approach could look like. Seth?
I love Simon and Garfunkel, and this seems like a bridge over troubled water. So one thing that I have been really pleased with, and not to perhaps Molly's delight, they being the bill sponsor and others have really involved her in this process. And I think giving ourselves time to figure that out is a really wise approach for right now. I think the bridge is a great.
Yeah, so I think for purpose, thank you, Seth. I think for purposes of bill tracker today, just so we're all clear, we'll stay position pending and we'll be working on these bridge concepts. And then there are still a lot of places where this bridge could go. But we wanted to make sure we were clear with everybody before we walked out of this room. We're almost to 1:45, but we still have several other bills that are big ones this week. So please, please, please hang with us for about 10 more minutes. Justin. Am I doing 88 or are you? I can do it because because I talked to, I don't need Okay. No, real quick, SB 197, Senator Harper accepted some of our amendments on that bill. That's the UTA governance bill. So this will have better local government involvement in both the role of the executive director and the commission. We're recommending support for Representative Cal Roberts' bill that would grow TTIF. Part of that emphasis is double tracking front runner. This just gives you a sense of what that looks like. And then thank you to Miranda at WFRC for putting this together to show that if HB 586 passed, you'd see a growth in state transit investment, which overlaps with the change to the UTA governance. And then House Bill 481, it's another transportation bill. We're recommending neutral, a lot of moving pieces on this as well. But Jared's been in touch with several cities who've been directly impacted by this to get their feedback. So I am jumping. We did a lot on economic development last week. So again, if you're interested in any of those bills, bring them up, except Carson. The House Bill 535, we're just recommending position pending because it just came out. Carson, 30 seconds, and then I'll hit 88.
Yes, House Bill 535 creates additional requirements for disposing of public property, of specifically real property. So it delineates between a significant parcel and a non-significant parcel. $500,000 is kind of the default in state code, but municipalities can determine that by ordinance separately. You have to, for all property, whether it's all property being disposed of, whether it's significant or not, you have to post a physical sign of the property saying it's for sale and announce the intent to dispose of it in a public meeting. And then in another public meeting, when you're actually selling it or leasing it, you have to do that. You just have to announce it and take a public vote as you would normally. And then if it's a significant parcel, you must also publish that announcement of the intent to dispose of it on your website or a real estate offering website, which I know has been a little bit of a hiccup for some. There's been some ongoing conversations with the Redevelopment Association on some technical amendments. We don't have a lot of time for this to discuss it in depth, but if you have concerns or thoughts on this bill, please let me know as soon as possible. It's in committee tomorrow morning.
Perfect. This is one of the latest bills in the tax increment space. Remember last week we gave you a list. So if you have any thoughts on any of the tax increment bills that were or economic development bills that are on the agenda today, just follow up with Carson. The one thing I will note with House Bill 507, there is language in there now about this large load piece. We got some good feedback from you last week. So if you have a city that is looking at economic development that includes large loads and you have not already talked to us, grab Carson, because this bill has language in there that would require you, if you're doing an economic development project, like a tax increment deal, dealing with large loads, that you have to go through this new tool rather than using a CRA tool, okay? So please, please, please make sure you grab Carson there. Okay, House Bill 88. This one's gotten some media attention and it impacts local governments. We need to take a second to talk through it. Substitute 5 came out of committee at the end of last week. Okay, that's why we haven't talked about it yet, because it was drafted early in the process, but it came out late, or it came out of committee late. And this is a bill that's really targeting undocumented immigrants and people who are using public services. The way the 5th substitute was drafted is it pulled in all political subdivisions. It created a criminal violation if a public employee knowingly failed to verify the lawful presence of someone who was receiving public services. And then the third piece is it gave a private right of action to a taxpayer against that employee. But it left open lots of questions about what that definition is of public services. Is it a police officer responding to a car accident? Is it, you sign a family up for their kids to play soccer recreationally in the summer? Then this would be the first time you'd have a private right of action for a taxpayer against a government employee. The previous versions actually waived government immunity. So there are a lot of moving pieces in this bill. Finally came to committee last week, and then over the weekend, over the weekend, they were working on a sub that I got just before this meeting, so I didn't have time to write it down in the slide. So I am pulling it up now, and we are doing this on the fly, folks. Give me 30 seconds, because they've tightened down the definition of the public service. Oh. Yeah, yep. Will you hand me my computer? Okay. Nope, this is fine. Okay. So let me tell you what is in the 6th substitute, which is now online. Okay. This is what is now in the 6th substitute. And we're going to ask a Slido question after I ask this. The Slido question is going to be, are there any other services that you as a city provide that we need to take into account as we are working on this bill? Okay. The 6th substitute removes the 3rd provision up here, which is the private right of action. Okay, so that would be gone in the 6th substitute. The 6th substitute still allows for, or still creates a criminal penalty against an employee. It would be an infraction instead of a Class B misdemeanor. And it creates a new standard for that individual. So if the employee of the political subdivision acts with willful or reckless disregard for the verification requirements. Okay, so it's no longer just that you knew, it's that you act with willful or reckless disregard for state law around somebody's documentation status. And then it's also spelled out what the prohibited public benefits are. So I told you a moment ago, we were concerned that under the 5th sub, that could include everything from a police officer responding to a car accident, or someone who's providing services in a domestic violence incident, or victim advocate, something like that, all the way up to like recreational programs. Here's what it now says. A political subdivision of the state may not provide a state or local public benefit that is funded by state or local funds, including, and here comes the list, non-emergency medical health care, local or state administered health care or health insurance, housing assistance, food assistance, cash benefits, tuition assistance, or other state or locally funded public assistance programs to an applicant who is not a qualified alien or who is without lawful presence in the United States. Okay? I'm going to read that list one more time, because then we're going to ask a Slido question of if there are any services that we provide as cities that, well, in fact, I'll just put this up here right now. This is the question I want you thinking about as I read through this language that's hot off the virtual presses, okay? A political subdivision may not provide a local public benefit that's funded by the state or local funds, including non-emergency medical health care, local or state administered health care or health insurance, housing assistance, food assistance, cash benefits, tuition assistance, or other state or locally funded public assistance programs to an applicant who is not a qualified alien or is or who is without lawful presence in the United States. Okay? So do you as a city provide any services that meet the definition of public benefit that would be affected by this bill in that new definition? So if it's, that's why we're asking the question, folks. Okay, I just listed the updated definition. So what we wanted to be able to come back to you and say, here's the newest substitute. Like this substitute's been out during this meeting. Give us feedback about what this new substitute would mean for your city so that we can take that back to the bill sponsor and to legislators. I'll check that. Go ahead.
While you're all thinking about this, to give you some additional color commentary. So the league officers meet with the staff right before this meeting, and we look at the Slido questions. There is some thought that goes into the Slido questions of the information we're trying to get from y'all to help us then guide our advocacy and lobbying efforts here up at the Capitol. And one of the things when we got this 6 sub, really just about 45 minutes before this meeting, was the league officers and the staff trying to think through all of the things that cities do, and all of us do slightly different things depending on the size of our city and the makeup of our populations. And so as we were trying to quickly think through, does this bill, with its elements that are, I think, just maybe generally uncomfortable for a lot of people globally, are there specific things that this bill is still attacking that cities do, or have those largely been removed? And what we decided in crafting this question and making it an open-ended question is we couldn't in that 45 minutes get our arms fully around all of the things 257 different cities of different sizes and types and demographic makeups may or may not do. And so that is why we're asking this question. Think broadly about the things that you do and engage in as cities that may meet this definition of public benefit. Put it into this question so that as we're evaluating this new 6 sub, we can do that analysis and make sure that we are not missing something. This is the tough part of the session when we get into these final 2 weeks where subs drop fast, and we're trying our best to make sure that we are doing that evaluation. There are approximately 480 bills that will pass between now and midnight on the 6th. And this is the part of the session where we're just doing our best to get our arms around that. So hopefully that explanation helps make sense of what it is we're looking for and what you can add into this question. And I see a bunch of hands. Mike, do your thing.
Just a quick question.
Before we get to that question, because I've gotten lots of questions asking of me too, and this is super helpful. We're looking at the Slido results as they're coming in, because the intent has been all about food assistance, tuition, like those pieces that are outside of our space. And we're just trying to show what that potential universe could be. So thus far, everybody who's asked me a question, my answer is yes. Like those are the things we want to be able to go back to the bill sponsor and say, you're actually bringing in all of these potential services that your bill doesn't contemplate. But we want you to tell us what those are so we can take them to him. Corey.
Quick question would be, where is the Senate at on this particular issue? Any discussions with?
Yeah, so when we talked about this with the Senate President was basically acknowledged that the bill was out there. That's as far as we got. And in his defense, the bill, when we met with him on Thursday, the bill still hadn't even come out of committee yet on the House side, right? So it's still ways to go.
Has there been any discussion of the unfunded mandate this creates? Because I'm just trying to think of the policies that my cities would have to put into place to comply with this. And I think it's going to be quite expensive.
Yep, that's something we brought up. But it's one thing to just say it's an unfunded mandate. It's another to be able to say, here's the list of everything that gets impacted, which is why we need it in the Slido question so we can build the list of everything that gets impacted.
Cam, behind you. It's a terrible policy. I think we can probably all agree on it. There's micro levels of everything. The fact that you're asking us to kind of scratch our heads and come up with the minutest ways in which we can potentially be gotcha'd because we violated this policy. It's monumental. Appreciate what you as a league staff are trying to accomplish. But I think if we just ask ourselves from a policy perspective, this is really bad micromanagement policy. And I think we need to consider, it's gotten better marginally from last week, but still, I'm concerned. If we hand out oranges after a soccer program, have we just broken the law by handing a kid food? And I think food's the most obvious thing that jumps out, whether it's our Meals on Wheels, whether it's our senior meals, whether it is us tossing candy at a parade or handing out water bottles at a parade or something along those lines. I think there's just a variety of ways that we are very dangerously being micromanaged in a policy that puts people in a very bad spot, especially well-intentioned employees that are trying to do what's right by actually giving someone maybe a drink of water or something like that.
I completely and totally hear you, Mark. I think one of the challenges that we face in combating this bill is legislators are worried about being put on the record right before they face delegates. And so they are looking for specifics, and they are looking to us to give them the specifics if they exist. And so the list you just rattled off, I hope you also typed into Slido.
I already hit send.
And because that is exactly what we need to be able to say, here is the universe of things that we think are problematic, and we have to be able to give that to them. This policy is overly broad and potentially has too many gotchas for our staff. That isn't a good enough answer for what they need right now. They need the specifics.
Well, no more candies being thrown from floats, because we don't want an undocumented kid actually having a piece of candy.
As what I've learned in parades, you have to gently roll them to the curb. No one can chase the candy into the street.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the 7th version of this bill, can you have an amendment so that cities can have a citizenship mark of the beast that can be on forehead so we can more clearly identify those who are legally here when we're dispensing benefits? I mean, it really, as ridiculous as it is, it really gets to that point, right?
The chair does not recognize the gentleman from Mill Creek with that comment. We're moving on. Other questions? I believe he's a voting member of a different city. Okay, other questions?
And I'll try to be quick. As a resident and official of Layton, let me just say that this is not the feeling of the rest of us. This is bad in all counts and by all counts. And I'd also ask that those of you who are putting in your comments think about any of your CDBG funds, any of your CTC programs, Communities That Care, all of those type of programs and activities that you provide in your city for families, for children, for parents. Think about all of those things. I didn't get into detail on the slide. I just put CDBG, but I'm happy to email and go through all of the things. And I do have my other legislators in my city on text right now.
Thank you. That is exactly, I think, the type of feedback and help you're looking for, so that we can make sure that we have those lists to show just how important those programs are and where we're going to inadvertently put cities and the work they do in conflict with the people they're attempting to serve.
So I did talk to one of our legislators about this, and it sounds like to me, I don't know, this is just, one person, but it does sound like they are telling legislators that those are not problems in this bill. So I think when we do go to them, we need to really tell the legislators that yes, these little things that you think aren't problems would be a problem for us in the cities, like we're trying to do. But that is kind of what's going around, I think. So
You are correct. I think we do really need examples of programs in many cities that would be tripped up by this new substitute. So we need your examples.
Let me add one other piece, just timing wise. This bill could be heard this afternoon on the House floor. Okay, so I want to make sure we got to it. So we're going to, as soon as our LPC is over, we're going to be quickly going through these results so we can get back to the bill sponsor and leadership. Whether or not they circle it today, I don't know, but timing wise, it could come up as early as this afternoon. So watch for action alerts. There could be action alerts later today, depending on what happens in conversations with legislators on property tax or on this or on several of the other things we brought up today. So stay tuned. Last bill, elections, it's in committee tomorrow.
And for everyone who's like, man, there's all those other bills I really want to talk about. There's lots of things. There are so many bills moving so quickly. Watch the nightly emails, watch for action alerts, watch for everything that we're putting out there. We're trying to stay up on all of it. So we brought this bill up a few weeks ago. This is HB 479. Here's a couple of the key pieces I want you to remember about this bill. One, drop boxes for vote by mail would have to be staffed by poll workers who would check ID when ballots are dropped off. So you couldn't just drop off a ballot at a drop box 24/7 like you can right now. There would be a very specific schedule for those drop boxes leading up to election day. If you have in that week before election day, if you have less than 30,000 active voters in your municipality, you'd have to have at least one drop box. If you have more than 30,000, you have to have at least two drop boxes and an additional drop box for every additional 30,000 active voters in that week leading up to the election. The day before election and election day, you would have to have one drop box if less than 10,000, and then an additional drop box for every additional 10,000 voters in your municipality. I'm guessing that's more drop boxes than you have now for most of your cities. So there's a fiscal impact to this. I will tell you right now, the sponsor disagrees with the Legislative Fiscal Analyst Office numbers on this one. But you can see the number there, that 934,000 one time in fiscal year 2026, $10 million ongoing. That won't be 10 million for each of you. Drop boxes aren't quite that expensive, but 10 million ongoing aggregated for the municipalities. Drop boxes, if you're doing the outside drop boxes that you like bolt into the sidewalk, those range somewhere from $8,000 to $11,000. This bill is up in committee tomorrow. Here's my question for you, and I'm just going to ask you, reach out to me. If you have concerns with the fiscal impact on this one, please reach out to me and let me know if you think this would cost some additional funds for your city to comply with this. Yes, we'll share the slides tonight, but let me know what this impact would be to your city, because there will certainly be an impact to some of your cities. Because of the fiscal impact and no state funding being proposed on this is one we're opposed to as an unfunded mandate. But please let me know what you think that would be to your city, or if you have different feelings on that before tomorrow morning. West Jordan, you need 14 boxes. Yeah, that sounds about right. You need, and again, one clarification I don't want to overstate the numbers. This is active voters, not residents. So you may have to do a little bit of math or do a little bit of digging to find that active voter number. It's not just residents. Not everybody gets to vote. But the numbers are still going to be up for several of you. With that, council member, I want to do one quick reminder as we get to the bill tracker. I'm trying to find one that says this. Position pending. If you see something that says position pending, and particularly for any legislators or legislative staff that may be listening to this, position pending doesn't mean we're working towards support. Position pending means we're pending on this bill, working to try to find some solution perhaps. It does not mean we're going to end up liking your bill, senator or representative or staff who may be listening. We may get to neutral on your bill if we're pending. That's usually where we go if we worked on things in pending. We do not often jump all the way to support. So we will clarify that in our email to legislators tonight. But if it says pending, doesn't mean we like it. It means we're working on it, which usually means we don't like something in it. So just want to clarify that one.
Thanks for sticking with us late today. I'll look for a motion to ratify our bill tracker as we've presented it. Mayor Palmer, second back here. Great. All in favor? Any opposed? One opposed. Great. And then we'll motion to adjourn. Mayor Bradshaw, a second over here. All in favor? See you next week.
Yeah, thank you.